Today I'm going to be walking you through what I cover in my window into Challenge B. The first time I was asked to host a meeting like this, I literally had no idea what I was supposed to cover or what was expected. And after 5 years, I feel like I've picked out my favorite things, the things that the parents are really kind of looking for as this kind of testing field of what are we getting into next year. And so I am going to show this to you and preview this to you as well, so you can see a model for what you might want to do in your community. And if we haven't met before, hi, my name's Erica Lynn, and I'm a homeschooling mom of 4. And it's my hope to help homeschooling become easy for you too. So I'm taking all of the things that I've learned over the years and putting them into these videos to help speed up your journey so you don't have to make the same mistakes I made. So let's jump in. The first thing is I always have 2 documents which I bring with me for our meeting. The first one is the application. So this is from last year. That way everyone can grab an application. If they know that they want to go ahead and sign up for Challenge B, they can fill it in and give it back to me right then with their application fee. I also have this book list which I've put together, and I will link that in the description. You can get this book list for free. And this is a great kind of agenda for the meeting, because essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through strand by strand what topics are we covering through the books that we're going through. So just to explain how this book list works, all the books in green like these are green light, you need to buy this book. All the books that are in red, like this one, is red light, don't buy this, you should have this at home already, we're reusing it from last year. And then the black supplies are things that are not CC books, but are just extra supplies that you're going to need. Challenge B does a lot of projects, kind of random things. And so there's a lot of random supplies. And if you don't have a shopping list like this at the beginning of the year, you will oftentimes find yourself running to the store every week first semester to buy more poster board or foam balls or something that they need to create a special project. So this is really helpful for the parents. So we're just going to run through this right now, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about Challenge B. The first thing I like to note, however, is that Challenge B covers 3 languages and 11 curriculums, okay? Unlike almost any other challenge level, most of our strands are going to switch from first semester to second semester, all right? And then the other thing is, in Challenge B, this is your students' first introduction to a heavy reasoning strand, and that is like its own language. So we are learning the language of reasoning. We are learning the language of Latin, and we are learning the language of algebra, as most of your students are moving into pre-algebra now. All of these relate a lot to each other, especially reasoning and algebra, very, very similar in the way they are written out and utilized. But just keep that in mind at kind of the depth of new information that your students taking in this year, and cut them some grace. So that's what I'm here to encourage. We're going to start with the easiest strand, which is logic. And in CC, logic always means math. So for Challenge B, we're moving into the pre-algebra level. In the past, we have used Saxton. Starting this next year, we are using the math map. Now, this is naturals, not the right level, because they have not released the Challenge B math map for next year yet, but it's going to look like this on the front of the first week, and all of the pictures will be the same. All of these sets of parents have already covered the math map in Challenge A, so it's going to be really comfortable. It's going to come in, it's going to be the same format, it's going to be the same pictures. We're going to have conversations in class, but we're going to dive a little bit deeper this year, and we're going to take these concepts a little bit deeper each week as we go through. I really do believe the math map is laid out well. It's totally new. I don't think there's any other curriculum like it, at least in America, for math. And so, yes, I would say it's probably going to take you 3 years to get used to it. So if you have a younger student in foundations, I highly recommend going ahead and getting them started with whichever level that they can pop into, because the skill of learning how to use classical tools in math is totally new. And just like essentials or when we do Latin, 3-year cycles really give you the ability to master how to work that program. So I really believe your 3rd year through the math map, it's all going to be easy. And for those who started the math map 3 years before Challenge, I think it's going to make their Challenge math years a lot more self-sustaining and a lot less parental involvement. So we're going to go through the math map for math. That'll be all year long, and you already have a feeling of what that looks like. If you want to know a little bit more about the math map, just some general how to use it, how to break it down, and how to scale it, I do have a video here that is just short and sweet, and it does touch on that, and you can check that out. Okay, the next strand we're going to go over is research. This is a really fun strand this year. And first semester, it is going to feel exactly like last year. It's going to be so comforting to your kids. They're going to come in, they're going to have a topic each week. They're going to write a paper and then do a different type of project with it. Last year, for research, they wrote papers and they drew a picture. This year, they're going to write papers and do different types of projects, poster boards, 3D models, timelines. There's so much creativity in this strand. Your creative students are really gonna lean into it and love it. So for first semester, there's not an official curriculum. Everything you need to know is in the guide, and it's in the appendix of the guide. So make sure you flag that. And if you want to know how I recommend tabbing your Challenge B guide, I have a video for that here as well that walks you through it. But you're going to need to reference the appendix for research all first semester. The cool thing about research is we're not just doing random topics. Last year in Challenge A, your student learned that I too can be a scientist because I can do a science project and I can write a science paper. And I now can read other science reports and other science papers because I know the general format and what that's like. Okay, that's supposed to be very empowering for your student. This year, we're going to come in and we are going to study the entire history of science and mathematics because they go hand in hand. We're going to study all of that through the lens of astronomy. I don't know why. I could probably research it, but for some reason, it seems like all the heavy hitters in science pick the field of astronomy. Okay, so when we're talking about science changing kinds of discoveries and things like that, it goes through the field of astronomy. So that's what we're studying. And here's the vision for first semester. What we want the students to see is throughout the history, these scientific experts sometimes got it right and sometimes got it wrong. Okay, so you too can be a science expert because you know how to do a science experiment. But also know that everyone gets it wrong. And sometimes in the past, when these people got it wrong, people believed it wrong for thousands of years before they figured it out and got the right scientific theories in place. It's a really, really great journey to take your student on right before we dive into second semester, where we're going to cover the topic of defeating Darwinism. Okay. And one of the things that we want to discuss is if scientists have got it wrong in the past, there's a chance that they've gotten it wrong again. And so the basis of this book is that it wants to put creation and evolution on the same playing ground because there is no definitive proof of either one. Neither one have been observed and neither one can be recreated, which is the only way you can create a scientific fact. Okay, so anyone who says that it's fact doesn't understand how science works. All right, so we're going to jump into this book. Now, Defeating Darwinism is written at a collegiate level. Okay, so I want people to understand that before you get started. This is probably going to give your eighth grader a little bit of a struggle. If they can't understand what they're saying, after several years, I had the same issue with every single class. Students just like, I read the book, but I really don't know what he said. What I have done to help students is I have put together a read aloud for this book where I read it section by section and kind of stop and break down some of the information in there so that they can track, like, here's the main point of what you just read. And here's why this is important. It's leading into another point later. If you want to do that, I've got a playlist right here that I will link and you can follow along with me and read the book with me. Mom and Dad, this is another one I highly recommend you read together with your student. So instead of having your student read it with me, something you could do is you all sit down and read it together. It's about an hour's worth of reading, between 20 minutes and an hour a week. Okay, so this is something you all could sit down and do in one setting. It's something you could do, 15 minutes every day until you complete the chapter. This is a great one to lean into. We're going to be outlining the book, and I recommend that students record their outline in the back empty pages of their book, so it's right there next to it. And I recommend they hold on to this book until they go to college, and they pull it out and reread it the summer before they go to college, because that's when they're going to be confronted with conversations about evolution and creation the most. And so it would be a great refresher so they can just remember what all the different facets of these two scientific theories are. Okay? All right, after defeating Darwinism, we're going to take the last 5 weeks of the semester and jump into a study called Atomus, which is just the baby grammar phases of chemistry, which they're going to cover in Challenge 3. So this is just a lot of memory work. We're learning some vocabs. We're learning about atoms. We're learning about how atoms bond together. And so we'll do that. It's a very short and easy curriculum. It is, I don't have it with me, it is just papers that you order from CC. So make sure you get those ordered from CC. It is a fill in the blank paper. They're very cheap. So you want to buy a new copy for every student so they can fill in the worksheets. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about debate. This can be one of the most exciting strands this year. First semester, we're going to read a book called The American Experience. This is a CC created book, and it's really cool because what CC wanted to do was to find all credible resources. This is a compilation of all sorts of different American heroes is kind of what it is. They're all first person sources. Now, a first person source is when the person who saw the event wrote it down. So it went from just one person's eyes to the paper. A second person source is when I saw the event, I told my friend Billy, and Billy wrote it down. Two people to the written source. So that's a second person source. A third person source is when somebody read the paper that Billy wrote and then they wrote a new paper about it. And so that's a third person out. Okay. These are all first person sources. The cool thing about that is you have a higher accuracy rating. Okay. So these stories should be really, really true and reliable, which is why they wanted to put them in this book. The bummer side of first person sources is sometimes you cannot find a first person source about an event or topic that you want to see in first person. So some of the stories in here may kind of seem like they're unimportant in that historical figure's life. And that could just be because that's the only first person source that they could get for this person's life. You have to think a long time ago when paper was more expensive, not as many things were written down like they are today. Essentially, we're going to be using this book to discuss heroes. Who is a hero? What makes you a hero? And is this person worthy to be emulated? Are all heroes worthy to be emulated, or are those two separate things? So that's what our conversation is going to be cycling back to. Also, remember, mom and dad, the debate strand first semester is kind of your lighter strand. It's where you can take a little breath. That story is only going to take them 20 minutes a week to read, so they can knock that out in one day, have a little more wiggle room in their schedule, okay? Second semester, we are going to move into mock trial. Again, this is just a paper curriculum you get from CC. It's the mock trial guide, and I don't have that in front of me, but it's just a 3-hole punched paper. You're going to order from them. Make sure you order it now because it will run out of stock sometimes, and you definitely need it before first week of second semester. Mock trial is so much fun. It is one of the highlights of many students' years at CC. They're going to work really hard on this. They're going to perform it in front of an actual court, an actual judge. And I'll tell you this, every trial I've ever been to, the judges come away and go, wow, I can't believe those are 8th grade students. They performed better than all the high school trials and most of the college attorney PREA trials that we do. And so that is just a testament to the level of public speaking and writing that CC has educated these students to. They are just hands and feet ahead everyone else at their age level. And so you're going to be really proud of what your student does. And I'm excited to see them go through that journey and learning. I also like to tell everyone, remember that this is their first team project. And as adults, it's still hard to work in teams. So a large part of what they are learning with this curriculum is not just the judicial process, which America is very unique and has a wonderful judicial process, and that's why we want to understand it well. But in addition to that, they are learning the skills of how to work together as a team, and that can lead to a lot of emotions. So all of that's very normal. And I say all of my students cry at least once before the trial. So don't even stress about that. A good cry is a great way to move into this because it can release all of those emotions. This is new. This is going to be stretching them. And I also know that when we finish the trial, all of my students come away going, wow, I'm so glad I did that. Okay. So no regrets here. They're going to learn and grow so much. Yes, it's going to be a little bit painful, but they've got this. They really can do it. They really do have the capability, and the guide, the mock trial notebook, walks them through everything they need to. Again, it's a CC written curriculum and it is laid out very well. Something I do like to mention is that your student is going to want to wear a suit to court. So you might kind of start thinking about that, setting aside a little bit of money to buy a suit, maybe looking for some deals, but probably don't buy it before second semester because most of your kids are going to have a growth spurt this year. But be aware of that after Christmas, looking for some suits for them to be wearing. And if your student goes on in CC, they're going to be doing debates over the next 4 years. So they can continue using that suit until they outgrow it. So you will get some use out of it. All right, our next strand is exposition. And this is also a really fun strand this year. So first semester is going to feel really comfortable. And just like last semester, we are going to read 5 novels. And they're really exciting, really a great pick of books, really good. And what we're going to be doing with each of these is writing our LTW papers. So we're going to be using our same LTW curriculum from last year. This time, though, it's not going to feel so foreign. It's going to feel much easier, okay? So they are going to be skipping some of the essays. So we are going to be writing essay 2, essay 4, essay 5, 6, and 7. Now, when we get to essay 7, that is the complete persuasive essay outline. So they've kind of made it. It's exciting. We like to see that. When they move on in challenge 1 and go on to essay 8 and 9, the only thing they're adding in are more figures of speech, their rhetorical devices. The essay outline structure stays the same. So that's kind of a little accomplishment that they make this year. There is this Words Aptly Spoken book that has all of the novels from A and B in here and some discussion questions. If you want to use that, this is not mandatory, but you might find that helpful to have discussions with your student or to also help them brainstorm for their Annie chart. Another thing that I like to do with my students is a reading journal. Each of these are a different book. And inside the reading journal, each page covers one chapter of the book. When they finish reading a chapter, I have them come in and write, okay, who are the new people they introduced? Where are the places they went to? What events took place in this chapter? What new words did I learn? Did I need to look up this time? And what are the facts of the story? Like, what interesting happened in this chapter? And then these facts, they can transfer straight to the interesting column on their Annie chart. So this can help you out when you're trying to hit 30 items on your Annie chart and your interesting column is suffering. Just come right back here to these facts and copy them over to Annie chart. And then finally, just a short little summary for that chapter. This really helps the students dive in deeper and really comprehend what's going on in the book. This is not required. I just use a composition notebook for this, but if your student you feel like might benefit, or if you are pre-reading the books over the summer, I highly recommend that you do this. And then you have short little summaries you can use to refresh your memory right before you go to class and have your discussions, okay? Like so many other strands, second semester, we are completely shifting gears in exposition. And this strand, I'm going to be honest, all of my students have loved it. Okay, so when I first took over directing for the lady before me, she said, when it comes to short stories, students either love it or hate it. And so I've been waiting to get some students who are like, I hate this. But to be honest, everyone has loved it. What this is your Words Aptly Spoken short stories. This is a CC curriculum. Once again, it is laid out perfectly for our 4-day structure. So we're going to go through here, and they are breaking down the components of a short story into these categories. Each week, we're going to cover a different component of writing a short story, and you're going to read 2 or 3 or 4 short stories that exhibit that component really well. And then you're going to do some exercises for like pre-writing to figure out how you're going to include that component in your story. And then you will start writing your story about halfway through the semester. But at that point, you already have all the information you need. You've got your storyline, you've got your theme, you've got your plot, you've got your sequence of events, you've got your characters outlined. So you can really set down with all this information, and the story should come pretty easily to your students at this point, okay? Now, I do have suggestions for students who are apprehensive about creative writing and are not sure what story to do. Just do this. Recognize that no story in this world is brand new. So you don't have to invent something from nothing. Pick your favorite short story. or your favorite fairy tale, and I just want you to retell it with new people and new places. So maybe you take the story of Cinderella, but you set it in a Western town, okay? Or maybe you take the story of Jack and the Beanstalk, and you make it an underwater adventure, or you put it in a futuristic, or they're climbing literally into a space thing out in the sky. So just take something you already know and retell it with your own twist, because that's really what every story is. It's just an old story retold with a new twist. It doesn't have to be life-shattering. The other thing is your director should put a limit on how long the short story is, because by nature, short stories have to be short. And so part of the goal of this is learning how to pare down your writing. Most students struggle with their story being too long. And so I have no minimum for the short story personally. That is up to your parent. However short you can cover all 5 components of the story structure, then your story can be that short. In fact, in this book, we have stories that are only 2 or 3 paragraphs long, okay? So if you can cover all the components of your story and the components of plot, which we're gonna cover in here, in 3 paragraphs, great. You have to be a really good writer to do that. So that is more of a challenge. Most people struggle with their story being too long. I cap my short story at 10 pages. And this is 10 pages typed double spaced, which means about 10 pages handwritten. And so it is short. It is very short. And I do that for 2 reasons. 1, they just have to have some sort of a limit. And 2, the more pages in the book, the more expensive it is for me to print. So at the end of the year, we are going to take the short stories that all of these students have written and put them into a beautiful book. And so these are the ones I've created. This one is one of my favorite ones. We had a student in the class who knew how to do some graphic design. And so she drew out a digital imprint of one character from every single student's story and put it on here. And then so I just took that picture and added it into the frame with the title. I reversed it and put it on the back with their names. So that was a really fun one. If I don't have anyone in the class who is very good at graphic art, I just use Canva to create a book cover, and that is simple as well. One of the things I've started doing is putting a little excerpt. So I ask my students, hey, email me your favorite sentence from your story, and we'll make like a little teaser on the back cover. I only had half the students in the class email that to me. I do not chase that down. Anyone who gets it to me can put it on the back cover, and that's been a fun thing to do as well. And then give the story title. So short stories, very fun, creative, and I really have actually had most students kind of not necessarily fall in love with the process, but enjoy the process as they go through, especially when those who don't enjoy writing recognize their story can be as short as 1 or 2 pages and still be excellent. So very happy with that. The next thing we're going to cover is grammar. So grammar is Latin. You don't need any new books for this year. You should have your blue grammar book, your purple lessons book, and then some answer key, whatever your challenge A director recommended for you is great. You'll just use the same one this year. Last year, we made it to lesson 15. This year, we're going to cover lessons 1 through 15 first semester. Okay. So about week 5, I have almost the entire class show up to Latin, and they're like, oh my gosh, Miss Erica, Latin is so easy this year. Why in the world is it so easy this year when it was so hard last year? And I just chuckle, and it's like, because it's your second time through. You've seen it. You see how it works together. And so going through it a second time, just like in Essentials, is so much easier. There's a reason we study this year after year after year. However, second semester is going to hit like a freight train, and we are going to move on from everything they covered last year, and we're going to cover 16 through 29 second semester. And it's kind of like Essentials after you come back from Faces of History, and you're just doing all these verbals and all these things that you really don't use very often and are super complex, and it's a lot of verbs, and some parents and students just kind of fall off the charts a little bit, and they're like, I don't know what's going on. Okay. It's a little bit how it's going to feel this second semester. We're going to dive into verbs hard second semester. Last year, like most of what you covered was nouns, adjectives, and just a little bit of verbs. But when we get past that, like almost the entire rest of the book is verbs, okay? I recommend you have a plan to help your student second semester. So whether that's signing up for some sort of Latin course like Jam with Latin, Latin with Andy, I know there's other ones out there. So maybe sign up for a Latin course. If you used the I Heart Latin videos on YouTube last year, they end at first semester. They end at lesson 15. So you'll have to find something else for second semester. But it is going to get difficult. Your student is probably going to need some encouragement and help to get through that. Even if that's as simple as your class puts together a little study group and they do Latin together, that's a totally great option. Last strand is reasoning. And in CC, reasoning means logic, okay? So this year we are doing 2 courses. We are doing an introductory logic first semester, and we are doing an intermediate logic second semester. Couple things you need to know. First of all, know each of these courses are a full credit hour at the high school level. Okay, that means typically they would take this course in high school and spend a full year learning it. All right. We are taking both of these, squishing them into a semester each and doing it at 8th grade. Why would we do this to ourselves? I will tell you. We are not doing it to master logic. Okay. This is your first tour through logic. All right, what we did last year in Challenge A kind of was grammar phase, kind of learned some of that vocabulary, those fallacies. We're going to be building on that this year, but it wasn't an actual logic course, okay? The reason we are covering so much logic in such a short amount of time is because we want you to see the grand vision of everything that logic encompasses. Just like your first year in Essentials, it was a lot of information. It kind of felt like drinking from a fire hose. This year's going to be drinking from a fire hose. But that first year in Essentials, it wasn't your goal to master everything. It was your goal to be exposed to it. All right? Same vision here. Your student is not trying to master all this information. They're just trying to be exposed to it. We want to just expose them to everything that logic encompasses, which means we have to go really fast. Now, next year in Challenge 1 and Challenge 2, they're going to come back to their second and third tours through logic. We're going to be using a different curriculum, but what we're going to do is we're going to slow way down and we're going to dive in real deep. And it's the goal to master logic in Challenge 1 and Challenge 2. Okay? They're going to be reviewing and refreshing these same topics at a much slower rate. So I always tell people, I do not recommend you count this for your high school transcript, although you can, but what might be very fatiguing for your student. I recommend you just get what you can get from this curriculum. Do the best you can and don't stress over the rest. If they don't fully understand a concept, that's okay. They're going to get to hear it again next year and get to hear it again in Challenge 2 and get to slow down and take more time to dive into that. All right. So for the first semester in introductory logic, your student can read the lesson and do all the exercises without using the DVDs. However, for the second semester in intermediate logic, I really do believe they have to have the DVDs. And the reason is introductory logic is more about learning terms and getting that basic grammar of logic down. Second semester in intermediate logic is where we really dive into the language of it. And it looks like algebra with only variables. Okay, so it looks like an algebraic sentence with only letters. This is where we kind of get into like learning the language of it. Like I said, we're learning 3 languages this year. That intermediate logic looks a lot like math curriculum, and it's like a whole different language. And what I find is like with a math curriculum, you need to understand what I wrote for step 1 and how I got to step 2 and step 3 and step 4. And we're going to write each step underneath each other, just like you do in algebra. And so with the DVDs, you can see, here's what I did on step 1. And now I can tell you, what am I changing and doing to get to step 2? And what am I changing and doing to get to step 3? And so it's good to see that process build as you go through. If you're just reading it in the book and you see the whole thing there at once, it is much more difficult to grasp that concept. And they're not able to explain it as well as they can show it as they're writing it out on the board. Okay. So second semester, intermediate logic. I know the DVDs are expensive, but I really recommend you get them. I recommend you watch them each week with your lesson, and that's going to make all the difference for you. So Okay, this is what we have for Challenge B. And this is what I cover in our window into challenge. So I hope this was helpful to you. And I hope that this takes some of the fear out of it. First semester in Challenge B is going to feel so much like last year in Challenge A. It's going to feel very comforting, and you're going to watch your student grow and take ownership of their own work. And they're going to develop the discipline to manage their own study habits because they see the vision and they know what they're supposed to be doing. Second semester is going to get a little bit more messy. We've got a couple of big projects and some projects that are new to them. So that's okay. It's part of that learning process. That is why our motto in Challenge B is ownership builds discipline. So as they take ownership of their work, they're going to develop the discipline in their life to that on their own. And I think you're going to see huge transformational growth in your student this year. Just psychologically in their brain, they are transitioning out of the grammar phase fully into the dialectic phase and starting to lean into rhetoric. And so it's really a big transition year. And I think CC's curriculum captures that and enhances that natural psychological development going on in a beautiful way. And if you made it to the end of this video, would you put a heart in the comments below? That just helps me to know how many people this was helpful to, and it just makes me, I'm so glad to see that. So thank you so much. All right. I hope you all have a great day and blessings on your challenge journey next year. Bye-bye.